Good day. This is Dr. Sean Benziger. We're here with for YouCount Indiana, another interview of a Hoosier that's going to be running for office. And we're here to introduce you to her so you get to know a little bit more about her and be able to ask questions directly. So when she gets elected, then if she doesn't do it, we know about it. But if she's doing it, we'll know about that too. So we're here today with Jackie Grubbs. First of all, welcome to the program. I'm so glad you took the time to allow us to interview you.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Dr. Sean. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today.
Well, I guess the opportunity is you're running for office. You're running for District 72, Floyd County, in that area. Let's talk a little bit about you and let folks know a little bit about you. And then we're going to find out why would you do this?
Okay. Well, I am a lifetime Floyd County, Indiana resident. I am the youngest of 5 children, and we grew up in a very patriotic Catholic household. And I attended Catholic grade school and then New Albany High School, and then stayed in New Albany for my college education with a business degree from Indiana University Southeast.
It's wonderful. Yeah, I had 2 kids coming through IU. They did very well. So I got 1 more left. Let me think. We've got 4 more months left and Dad is going to have a party. So there. So now, have you ever been in politics before or running for office?
No, I have not.
Okay.
My whole motivation for running, once again, I mentioned that I've grown up in a very patriotic household. My father, who's deceased, he was a World War II veteran.
Wow.
And he was a lifetime member at the VFW and American Legion, and also served as a chaplain there. And as young children, you know, every morning he would go out and he would put up the flag. And then in the evening after work, he'd say, "Who gets to help me take down the flag?" And, you know, we would do the official taking down and folding of the flag, and, you know, would attend all the Memorial Day ceremonies and things at the small national cemetery here. And so he just really instilled in all of us a big love of country. And so, you know, the last 2 years, initially when they had the COVID lockdown, I was like, okay. And as the 2 years progressed and we saw one calamity and oddity after another, I started having a lot of questions and doing a lot of research online. I started looking for different events to attend and lectures. And I'm located right down by Louisville, Kentucky. And so I had a lot of opportunities to either drive to Indianapolis or Columbus or Noblesville to hear a speaker, or else Frankfort, Kentucky or Lexington. And it wasn't unusual for me to get off work at 4:30 or 5 and take a 2-hour drive to find out what in the world was really going on. And
so what in the world is going on? That's really a wonderful way to say it, because isn't it interesting that, you know, this 57% of the counties in Indiana have no paper. In other words, you do not walk out. It's interesting if these legislators in the state of Indiana that are supporting or at least keeping this system, I'm wondering if they go to the bank and they never get receipts of what money they put in the bank, where it goes, and if they can even get it out. I wonder if they actually would do that. Now that sounds silly, but that's what they're asking the people to do. And I'm like you, and I've never been involved in politics, except for that I have always voted. By the way, I do want to say one thing about the flag. I was raised in a Missouri Synod Lutheran school system that had 32 students in 6th grade. So we had the big class 8, right? And the big pride of it was to be able to, every month they would rotate out a different kid that 2 kids that would go out, and the flag was monstrous. We're little kids trying to figure. You had to have 2 of them, and there was a way that it was folded, and if you didn't fold it right, you didn't get to do it again. And it was every morning and every night. It was exactly like that. I'm so impressed that your father did that even in your own home. And now we're having a hard time with people even talking about the flag or saying the pledge, when everything they have is from that. I find it almost humorous to listen to people try to defend this when it's because of this we have these opportunities. So let's talk about your 3 biggest things. So you've driven to Indianapolis, which is a long haul for a young lady working and doing everything else. And what did you find out that made you run? And what were the 3 biggest topics that you're just kind of like, if I go, this is what I'm doing?
Well, my biggest concern is our individual rights being infringed upon. I work for a small business, and so therefore I know the concerns that they have with keeping the doors open and keeping things going. And fortunately, the small business I work for was considered essential, so they did not close. But I still observed all of the restaurants and all of the stores, and even some of the larger stores who were my favorite places to shop that no longer exist. And so I was very worried about our individual rights. And so I also was wondering what was going on with COVID. And so a lot of my clients, I'm a marketing rep, I'm the marketing director. And so a lot of them were forcibly closed. And so I was working by telephone instead of having the drive time to get there. And so my workday shrunk. I had probably an extra 3 hours a day. And so I would look on YouTube for an answer about COVID. And I stumbled across a doctor from Minnesota named Dr. Scott Jensen. And I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's now running for governor. And he was talking about how successful he had been. And this was maybe April of 2020 or May of 2020, and how successful he had been of treating about 30 some odd patients. And I think he mentioned 5 or 6 of them even were on chemotherapy, and they had all recovered from COVID within 3 to 5 days. And he actually was serving in the state Senate, I believe, and he had been relieved of that position from treating these people. And his medical license was being threatened, and he was sitting just as you and I are, and he had all of his credentials and where he had received Resident of the Year from the hospital he was employed with, and now they were threatening his medical license. So that was probably my first red alert on, what the situation was.
Yep, highly capable people all of a sudden losing their minds, and they had to correct them, right?
Yes.
With something that has almost a very, very, very 40 some years, 2,000 people dying. I mean, it's beyond belief. Why would you stop them from doing that when you aren't doing anything anyhow? Mostly in the hospital, they only give severe crisis intervention care because early on they didn't know what to do. So it's interesting that even trying things that seem to be working was actually being slapped down instead of celebrated as here's an option. We know it doesn't have any major side effects, so let's try this. But it was amazing how this entire thing seemed to be driven by a media that didn't actually think that they should ever look at factual support and then actually talk to both sides and allow the people to make the decision. I think that's what we lost, isn't it?
Exactly.
I'm not here to say one way is better or another, but what we used to, I love Walter Cronkite, right?
Yes.
Gave you both sides. You got to make your choice. It's like we are just not bright enough to make our own decision anymore. So I'm glad you picked up on that.
Yes. So that was my, the first thing that had me looking for answers. And then I was contacted by a cousin, and she mentioned in June of 2020, when all of the major cities were having all the civil unrest, that the police locally in one of the neighboring counties was having an event where people could come and hear, what was being talked about there. And so, their belief was more, it was a deliberate civil unrest. And so then that had me researching those situations. And then there was another county a little north, and they also had police talking about it. And so I attended that. There are several Catholic websites that I follow, and there were some Catholic doctors there. Truth for Health, I believe, is their website, and they started putting out conferences. And I would be listening on my cell phone on a Saturday as I did all my housework. And so, one thing led to another. And then, of course, we had the questionable election. And so I actually came to Columbus and Noblesville, I think, for several talks about cyber attacks and different people that worked on the Arizona election audits and that type of thing. And so the more information that I received, I had people approaching me to become even more involved. And so I was asked to sign up for the Hoosier Leadership Series, and that's put on by Indiana Family Institute. And so I said, well, if it'll help save the country, I'll do it. So I said, but I'll just tell you, I'll never run for office.
Of course you did. And then God said, you will. No, just
Yeah, well, I do believe that, and I
I
do
do believe
believe,
that.
yes, I tell people I know that I'm just like the Blues Brothers. I'm on a mission from God.
There you
So,
go.
that's the only
I
thing
think
that,
the Blues Brothers had it right there.
yes, that could have brought me down this path.
Okay.
So,
So pro
um,
rights and election integrity is part of it. What's number 3?
okay, so number 3 is education. So I started attending some school board meetings, and I actually spoke about education over ideology. And there were some of the, the conservative school board members that came out and even spoke to me afterward and engaged in conversation. And one of the members, which I'm also familiar with because she was a principal when my son was in grade school, she walked by in her mask and she tilted her head and she just winked at me. And so I was like, well, that I can't tell because her face is covered up. Was that a friendly wink? It doesn't almost, she isn't stopping to engage in conversation like some
Right.
of the others.
Mhm.
And so I also attended the school board meeting when they were discussing masks, and I didn't need to speak there because that was standing room only. And so then I attended some other school board meetings where they were discussing the standardized testing scores throughout the entire state. And they were happy that Floyd County was 3rd and 4th, but the top schools in the state were at 50 some odd percent reading proficiency and 40 some odd percent
That was great.
mathematics.
Oh,
And that we were 3rd or 3rd and 4th.
wow.
And so, if everyone's coming in last place, I can't see where that's something to brag about. So that all of these things made me become more engaged, and to the fact that the only meeting that I saw that had an abundance of citizens was the one concerning children and masks.
Yeah, sure.
And so there were only a handful of us at these other meetings. And I really can't call out to any people to fault them, because before 2020 and the lockdowns, I was just like everyone else. And I had a lot more fun then, I will say.
I bet you. I bet you.
But now I am so driven to stay on top of things and look for answers. And I've taken, some constitutional classes on the Constitution, the Federalist Papers, the Bill of Rights. And I have learned more in the last 2 years than I may have learned my whole life.
Maybe that's what this was all about, is to shake us, because I was a passive Christian that did my job, took care of my patients, took care of my family. I did what I need to do. And I thought, I am electing people that I hope and pray are doing a good job. And then I found out that there's something that changes. It's like this brotherhood association, and unfortunately they seem to go there, and it becomes a group of people who have to agree with each other, not represent the individuals they have. So Floyd County District 72, you're running against whom?
I'm running against Ed Clear.
Okay.
And
Now, why does Ed need to be run against?
well, I really, once again, when I was a passive voter and didn't pay attention, of course, I voted for him every time. But once I started looking into him as my opponent in the election, because as I looked around at a lot of our political leaders, they don't seem to be concerned about the oddity of what's happened the last 2 years.
Isn't that odd? I mean, that alone should be bothersome, shouldn't it?
Yes, I mean, it's just like, what? Everything's normal, and so that was, but when I would pull his name up on the internet, it shows up Ed Clear Republican, Ed Clear Democrat. And so you click on his name and it says Ed Clear is a bipartisan representative for Indiana District 72. So as you look at his voting record, he votes with the Democrats as often as he does the Republicans. Most recently, he voted in favor of the transgender males being on the girls' team, which puts them in the locker rooms with the girls as well as on the ball field. He also was not in favor of the transparency in the classroom for the parents.
Isn't that weird?
And
What do you have to hide? I mean, you mentioned that 40%, 50% schools, and you know what isn't attached to that? It's a number. It's a bad number, but I would love to have of the thousands of children that stand in front of these groups that are in these school systems and say, this is good. I would like, we talk numbers and statistics. We don't realize how that's attached to human beings, and we logically realize that. But wouldn't it be nice to line them up and allow them to explain to each kid why we're failing to this extent and why we think that's good enough? So Jackie, I can't tell you how much I'm so glad to hear that. I'm hoping we bring more of a personal touch of who is affected, not just one, but as many as it takes until people's hearts start breaking and start bleeding, so they really understand what their choices are about. Let me ask you one other thing about the schools, okay? Do you believe that they're getting paid money to maintain masks or other types of things from other governmental authorities?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
So we now have set up a scenario that the children are secondary to the money they get. And that's why it's not just safety, because I'm all about safety for kids. That's not the issue. The issue is, why would we have to pay you for you to do something when your job is to do what's best for them? I don't understand that.
Yes, exactly. Well, some of the school board meetings that I actually attended also in Clark County, which is our neighboring county, and then Floyd, and they were discussing in Clark County all the millions of dollars that they had, as they did in Floyd. But what stands out in Clark County is they were discussing that they were getting new heating systems, not because the other ones they had were broken, but because they had to use this money, and Floyd said the same thing, or lose it.
Yep.
And so, yes, they were being,
So this is a money push as much or more than even possibility for the children. You would think what they would do is say, 40% is such a failure rate, we're going to hire 10 more teachers. And we're going to go after this because it's unacceptable to have that many thousands of kids not being able to read and write correctly. That would make sense instead of buying a boiler system they don't need.
Correct. Plus, there were going to be, additions built onto schools, and it was the motive of, I said shut down, but I meant losing that funding if they did not spend it. You either spend it or it's gone.
This is the only time I've ever saw anything under 50% is considered a great success rate.
Well, what the distraction is all of the social drama. It really is a form of drama in the classroom, and children have enough distraction and drama, whether it be, something going on with, a classmate that they fell out with, used to be their best friend or whatever. They don't need the teachers constantly feeding a lot of negativity and drama.
Agreed.
And they need to make it exciting to learn.
Yep. So one last question. If you are faced, when you win the position, if you are faced with a decision between an individual voting group and a corporation, and the situation is that it's exactly 50% more as beneficial for both, okay? Are you voting with the corporation, or are you voting with the people if it's exactly down the line?
Oh, it's definitely the people. My slogan per se is the citizen's voice, the people's choice. And the only reason I am running is to represent the citizen. And another part of being a candidate is looking at where donations come from for the candidate. One, because I'm looking for donations, but all of mine have been from individuals. And I definitely appreciate that. And it does make it a little more challenging than when you're taking it from interest groups. But what I have found is that just even in the situation of Ed Clear, many medical and pharmaceutical companies have donated to his campaign. And so therefore it does make a conflict on, there's a big attack on repurposed drugs because those are $3 and $5. But then you have, the vaccine, and actually, if you listen to the doctors and like Truth for Health, the remdesivir is very controversial. I've also attended in Indianapolis the COVID Global Summit a couple of months ago as well. So, but that is, I believe, $3,000 every time a hospital administers that. So,
sounds like you have a lot to clean up.
Yes, so campaigns are very expensive, and so there I do realize that you look for, campaign contributions wherever they may come, but unfortunately it makes you beholden to maybe a situation that is not the best for the citizens in the country.
Right,
So,
and you would think that the companies would benefit when the citizens benefit. Healthier, happier citizens, that would be the goal. I think that was the whole principle of it. So, okay, we got to meet you, and now we got to talk to you. Know that if things come up and you want to come back on and share information or content and communication, you're always welcome at YouCount Indiana. And we
Thank
wish
you
you
so
well.
much.
We thank you for spending the time this morning.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're here we've had the opportunity to meet Jackie Grubbs. She is from District 72, Floyd County. We thank her for her time.
Sean?
Yeah.
May I also tell people how they can find me?
100%.
Okay, my website is www.jackie and then the number 4 indiana.com. And I'm on Facebook and YouTube at Jackie Bright Grubbs for Indiana State Representative. So my maiden name is in there, BRIGHT.
Fabulous.
So Jackie Bright Grubbs for Indiana State Representative on Facebook and YouTube.
Thank you very much. We appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.